All right, and we're live, bro. Welcome back, everyone, to 305 Takes. We know it's been a while since we've been back on. We took the Thanksgiving break. We able to do some stuff with our families, but don't get us wrong, we still watch sports. And I know because this week, me and Miles, we texted during the Michigan Ohio State game. That was
Crazy.
that was bad.
Yeah,
We
that was
texted
pretty
during
crazy.
during the Thanksgiving games. Then this past Sunday, so obviously a lot happened, but we got a good show for you guys today. We're going back to our normal on Mondays and Fridays. So I think we just got to get started with the Dolphins game where they beat the Texans,
Beat
but
the hell out of the Texans.
well, it was 30 to nothing for the Dolphins, and then they take out to they bring in Skylar Thompson, and then the Texans made somewhat of a push at the end. They made somewhat of a push.
3 straight scoring drives.
Yeah, and we're able to have the final score 30 to 15. So I do have to say this that the Dolphins showed they can score with the teams, but also it feels like sometimes, all right, sometimes they do underestimate their opponent.
I also think so. Taron Armstead goes out with a minute 16 left in the second quarter. From that point until 3 minutes left in the third quarter, those were the 4 times Tua got sacked. And the fact that the game was already at 30-0, and with just how dominant the offense looked, they scored on 5 of their first 6 possessions. I saw a stat that they haven't used Thomas Armstead in a game, or Morstead, the punter, in a game since November 6th. So that's pretty crazy. I think the game just got out of hand, and the offensive line is going to be questionable, especially if Armstead can't come back. And Austin Jackson, who was just returning from a trip on the IR, left this game with an ankle injury. So I think the Dolphins just wanted to limit as much damage as possible, and we're kind of content with where the game was going to be. But I thought the defense played well, especially in the first half. Jalen Phillips was really good after quarterback. I think they had 4 players. It was Chubb, Wilkins, Phillips, and I want to say Van Ginkel all got 4. I got at least 3 pressures on the quarterback in the game. So I thought the defense played, somewhat well. I'm just impressed that offensively they can really do whatever they want. Like the running game wasn't there, and they didn't have Raheem Mostert in the game. It was just a Jeff Wilson exclusive, and I was kind of surprised that they weren't able to kind of gash the Texans more
Yeah.
through the running game, just considering how bad they've been against the run all season. But I mean, they basically were doing whatever they wanted to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle during the course of the first half, and for it to be 30-0, because I get the Texans are really, really bad, but I don't remember them being down 30-0 against anybody else.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. The only thing I would say that ended up bad for the Dolphins during that stretch is that Jeff Wilson did leave the game. So it does kind of hurt the depth of the running back position, but I think they should be fine going into next week when they do play the 49ers, which we'll talk more about on Friday. But I do feel like for the offense to look as good as they are now, which is good for them because now it's like, all right, you really want to get rolling going into the playoffs because you want to make sure, okay, what's going on. What I did like most about what I saw from the Dolphins offense was that there was a lot of plays where Tyreek and Waddle were not the focal point. You saw a lot of Sherfield. You saw a lot of the other guys really kind of step up and make some plays. So I do think that is good for the Dolphins because when it comes time when they play good teams like the 49ers, or if they make the playoffs, which most likely they are, they need someone to step up outside of Waddle and Hill. Because, like we said before, teams are going to try to lock in on them and negate them to take away them from Tua and say, all right, can
But
you
is
keep
it
anyone
possible?
else?
But is it possible?
I would say that if they want to take out someone, I feel like they have a better chance of taking out Tyreek Hill. I feel like that will be more
But then
possible
you
because
have
we've
to
seen
leave
teams
Waddle
do it
one on one.
when Hill was on the Chiefs. They've taken out Hill.
And then you get killed by Kelsey, and then
Yeah,
now we get killed by Waddle.
so that's
That's
where
the
I would
thing.
say I feel Jalen Waddle will have a bigger playoff run if they were to make the playoffs. Because I feel
I,
like
I just don't even know
teams
if
will
it's
be more
possible.
focused on Tyreek.
I get to being more focused on Tyreek, but even when you look at Minnesota, like they played New England this past weekend, and all right, I don't really get what the game plan is, but usually when you face Bill Belichick, he's gonna double a guy like
They didn't
Jefferson,
double Jefferson.
put his number one corner on Thielen, and then make either Osborne and Hawkinson beat him. And they absolutely could not do that. And if that's, one of the better defensive coaches we have with a secondary that we both like who are the teams that realistically can shut them down? And are any of them in the AFC?
The only team I thought that could going into the season, just because I really liked their secondary, I really liked Baltimore, but Baltimore just did not show it because I love their secondary as a group. I like Humphrey, I like Marcus Peters. You bring in Marcus
Their
Williams, I
safeties
thought
are
was
great.
good.
Yeah.
Kyle
Draft Kyle
Hamilton.
Hamilton, yeah.
So I've thought out of all
Chung.
secondaries, I felt they had the strongest core that could actually compete, but this year they just haven't played good from start to finish.
Yeah, they've had such a funky season. But, for the Dolphins, Tua is now 14-2 in his past 16 starts, including 9-0 at home. This is their fourth time in a row scoring at least 30 points in a game, their longest streak since 2009. But it does get tougher from here. And I like that this, because I thought this was a possible matchup where they would start slow and, possibly be looking ahead. Considering that they were coming off the bye, I was, worried about the offense, not finding rhythm right away, but they put that to bed pretty much as soon as the game started. And then their next 3 games are on the road. 4 of their next 5 are on the road. And that includes the 49ers, the Chargers, Buffalo, and New England all on the road that they have to face. And then a home matchup against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, and the White Knight and Mike White coming back in home for him, a homecoming, as he's a South Florida kid, to face the Dolphins later in the season as well. So I think this is a really important stretch for them. I hope the injury to Armstead isn't too serious and he doesn't have to miss. Hopefully he doesn't have to miss any games, but at least keep it to limited as least amount of games as possible. But I'm just really excited with this offense. And yeah, obviously I want to see them match up against some of these better teams. And I think, next week in particular, as you said, we'll talk about on Friday, going into the San Francisco matchup. But with the way that San Francisco defense has been playing, and the fact that they're already they're familiar with the offense already, being that Mike McDaniel came from that system, I'm really fascinated to see how that game turns out. And then the week after, you get, the infamous Tua versus Herbert game. Once and for all, we can finally decide.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like probably we could say that the roles last year flipped, where Tua was struggling with the offensive line and his weapons, mainly wide receivers, while Herbert had basically almost everyone healthy. And now this year the roles flipped. Tua has, I would say, compared to last year, a very much improved offensive line.
Oh, it's night and day. It's night and day.
Yeah. And then wide receivers,
the way they've been playing.
Wide receivers having Tyreek every game and Jalen Waddle every game he's played definitely helped. And then Herbert, the Chargers, it's just injury after injury. I've seen a lot of injuries on teams, but man, the Chargers have just been on the wrong side of it this whole year. Because I feel like the biggest injury, Rashawn Slater, that was massive. And then Keenan Allen, he's basically been gone for almost a whole year, outside of 2 weeks?
Yeah, like 3. He played the last 2 weeks, and he played a little bit in week 1. So 2.5.
And then Mike Williams, barely seen him. So, and then he's been stuck with Gerald Everett, Joshua Palmer.
Yeah.
But credit to Herbert, because he's still
and DeAndre Carter. Carter's pretty good, though.
Yeah. And then also Herbert getting that rib injury in week 2, which now you could kind of see, now in the weeks that it has progressed, he has looked better. Because you could kind of see where he's not holding his rib cage and everything. So credit to them. I will say to Justin, he has been playing better throughout the weeks, because he's still making throws that honestly, it's undeniable to know. It's bro, this dude's legit. So
yesterday he was zipping that ball all over the place. It was his first. The interception got overturned because I guess it moved while he went to the ball. But that would have been 6 weeks in a row with an interception for him. And it's not like he's throwing multiple, but that's pretty staggering for a quarterback that we hold, in such high regard. But I just can't say enough about this Dolphins team. And I'm fascinated to see how this whole AFC East shakes out because the Jets looked like a completely different team yesterday
Yeah,
offensively
with
with
Mike White
Mike
on the
White at
field.
quarterback. The Bills, I mean, they're piecing together these wins, but they just don't look as dominant as I think
Injuries.
we all assume they would be. And then you have the Dolphins, who they haven't really been in this position before, where they're basically in control of their own destiny. They're a game up on the Bills because they won the head to head. They got to beat the Jets to get
Yeah,
to
to at
maintain
least
that lead, but
yeah.
they have a victory overall above the Jets. And then when you look at the West Coast trip is the one that scares me the most because they're going to be gone for a while. I would assume that they're going to do something similar to what teams will do when they have back-to-back games in California, where they just go out
Yeah,
early
they
the
just stay
week
at one
before.
place the whole time.
Yeah, and get acclimated to the weather so that there's no jet lag or time. The time difference doesn't play a factor into the game. So I think these next 2 weeks will be really important, especially because of the 49ers look damn impressive. Like we have a topic coming up where we're gonna talk about the NFC contenders that we like, and the 49ers I think definitely are going to be talked about a lot in that segment. But for me, I think that Chargers game is fascinating because I really think that there's potential that the Dolphins might go in there and just blow them out. I don't like that Chargers
I could see it.
defense at all. Yeah.
Yeah, considering the way how the Chargers have looked, I mean they just haven't looked good as a team, and who knows, that might be the final nail in the coffin to get Brandon Staley out of Los Angeles for all we know. But like you said, we're going to talk about in one topic to see the 49ers. They are probably going to be the head of the discussion, and that's who is the NFC favorite. And as of this point right now, I want to say the Eagles, but the last 3 weeks they just simply have not looked like the Eagles. But
I
I
don't know.
also,
Yesterday they did.
yep,
Yesterday
well,
they looked like the Eagles.
offensively they did. Defensively, they weren't like dominant, but I also had to go look at their schedule. Okay, you also haven't played very much good teams. You played the Texans, okay. You played the Bears, all right. So, but right now,
Yeah,
if
but
I
they
had
got
to,
the Vikings in there. They got the
yeah, they got the
Vikings. They got
Vikings
the
in there too.
Cowboys. I get it with Dak being out, but they've played their schedule. I mean, yesterday I thought it was they got the early pick on Rodgers, and then the undrafted rookie coming in and making that pick was pretty crazy. But yeah, they do get. It looks like they get pushed around, and I know that they signed Sue and everything. But honestly, for me, my NFC favorite might just be the Cowboys.
Honestly, I'm right there with you because the Vikings, after what I saw they did to the Vikings, to me, I'm like, hey, if they match up again, I could see the same result.
It's that pass rush is crazy. That
Yeah.
that that pass rush is crazy, and offensively, I think they have just enough to win these games. And if you look at their offense compared to San Francisco, like, is it that much different? Like, I get San Francisco has more of the name brand value because they have Kittle, they have McCaffrey, they have Debo, but
Yeah.
I'm taking Dak over Jimmy G every day of the week. So I think that's better. I honestly like the Dallas offensive line, and they're expecting Tyron Smith to come back and they can move their rookie who they moved out to guard or out to tackle who they originally
Back to
drafted as a
guard.
guard back to guard. I mean, it's not McCaffrey, but I think I would rather have the combination of Zeke
Tony Pollard.
and Tony Pollard over because who was it yesterday? It was Mitchell, right? It
Yeah,
was Elijah
Elijah
Mitchell
Mitchell and
and Hasty
T-Mac.
looked good. Yeah, it looked good with McCaffrey as well. So I think it's pretty much a push on offense or slight lean to Dallas. And then for me, I just think that pass rush is going to be too much, and especially if you get a quarterback like Garoppolo, who I mean, did you
Who
see
just
that throw?
doesn't move.
And you saw that throw yesterday where he was getting hit and he like closed his eyes, still threw the ball, and it bounced off
Yeah,
the dude's head. I was like, he
bro.
he knows when that pass rush is coming. Like he's not one of these guys that's gonna dance around, move up in the pocket, and still look downfield. Like he's like, please don't hit me, please don't hit me.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Dak. At least Dak can move. Dak is somewhat mobile. He's not mobile like a Jalen Hurts or
Yeah.
Lamar, Daniel Jones, but he can move. Dak Prescott can move. So I do like them in a matchup against the 49ers. I feel like it will be, like you said, almost a push because it's kind of like, all right, you're like even on almost every level. The only thing that gives the 49ers the advantage is penalties because Dallas just, they
Well, I
live and die with penalties.
I would just say coaching in general, because I would take Shanahan over Mike McCarthy every single
Any
day
day.
of the week. And we've seen Mike McCarthy just inexplicably at the end of these games. I mean, last year's playoff matchup, like literally last year's playoff matchup between these same two teams, and they decide to run a quarterback draw with no timeouts
And
and
13
stay inbound.
penalties in that game for Dallas.
Yeah. So, and I will see what happens with Odell Beckham Jr. I know that there was some news that came out with him yesterday involving a flight from Miami to Los Angeles. So I doubt that will really have any impact on
Yeah, that's
teams
not gonna
that
have
are
too much.
interested in him. But if he signs with the Cowboys, that is serious. Like obviously we're gonna need to see him on the field, like because it's not only that he's coming back off the injury, but he hasn't played this year. And it's not even like, oh, he's been on a team like training big, like he just hasn't been around. So I want to see how long it would take, for him to shake some of that rust off, how long, until he trusts his body fully. But even if he's just a decoy, him and CD, and then you add Gallup as well, that's pretty nice.
Noah
That
Brown.
and you got Schultz, who I don't think he's that great, but Dak does trust him.
Yeah, he trusts
Dak
him a
will
lot.
go his way that way. Yeah. So I do think that the Cowboys definitely have serious contender status, but it's just I feel like they always do something to get in their own way. Like they're always their biggest foe. And then for me, second, I mean, I guess it would have to be the 49ers, but
I agree.
it just depends on who they match up with. Because personally, for me, if they match up with the Eagles, I think that takes away their biggest thing on defense, which is that pass rush. Because I think the Eagles have the best offensive line in football, like easily best offensive line in football.
But also with Jalen Hurts, him being a very good mobile quarterback, I feel like that hurts because I've seen the 49ers defense play good these past weeks, but I could also say, all right, what type of quarterbacks have they played? They played quarterbacks that love staying in the pocket.
And
The
like
only
yesterday,
thing
I get they shut out. I get that they shut out the Saints, but I've never seen a team
that's
run so
Andy
many
Dalton.
plays. But I've never seen a team run so many plays inside the 5-yard line without scoring. Like they didn't
Yeah,
want to score. Like the Saints
they
just physically did not want to score. It was more about them not wanting to score than the 49ers throwing a shutout.
yeah. So I was like, all right. And then, like you said, the biggest reason that just hurts me with the 49ers, Jimmy G is just simply like, I understand. Yeah, he gets these wins, but let's be honest. How many times are those wins he is responsible for?
I wouldn't say many, but I mean, at some point, we have to give the guy credit.
Yeah,
Because he
but
goes to the NFC Championship game last year after they drafted the guy to replace him. They basically kicked him off the team. He didn't even practice with the team in OTAs. He was on a different field.
yeah,
And they're now in first place in the NFC West after the Seahawks lost. And that's not even mentioning that he led them to the Super Bowl years before that. So it's like, yeah, I get it. He might not, he's not for me, he's not for you. Like he's just not our type of player. But there's something about him that, I mean, he gets the job done. And like, I feel like that's half of the job of being a quarterback.
I understand that. But I will say this for any Jimmy G supporter out there, you want to know this stat? Going into the fourth quarter, if Jimmy Garoppolo during his time with the 49ers, if he's been down by a field goal, 3 points, he's 2-9.
Yeah.
Now let that sink in, people. You say Mr. Wins and he could come back. No, he can't. If he's down by a field goal, he's 2-9 in the going into the fourth quarter. So that just shows me, which is a front runner. He showed me
that's
he is a
not
front
an
runner.
insurmountable lead to overcome. 3-point leads. I mean,
It's one possession.
Look at the Ravens. The Ravens have blown 4 double-digit leads in their 4 losses this year.
Yep. And see, if Jimmy Garoppolo was playing the Ravens this year, I would give him a shot because I know how bad that Ravens defense is in the fourth quarter. But, it is what it is. That's what the 49ers talk. But
we're both rolling out the Vikings, right, for the NFC? I just don't see
can't put I would say this. If the Vikings put up more of a fight against Dallas, I would consider them. But after seeing that, it was just, bro, that was bad. But I'm just going to – we'll talk about another NFC team contender that's there. I'm sad that they're in this because it reminds me of a team that was just simply not meant for the playoffs. But we do have to give a shout out to our presenting sponsor, E2G Sports, who helps us broadcast 305 Takes on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms where you guys can get your news on basketball, football, baseball. You want it, it's there. They have their website, E2Gsports.com, where you can look up articles, listen to the podcast, look up any type of news that you want. There's a lot of quick reads on there, which makes it a lot easier for you if you're on the go. Or if you want more in-depth podcasts outside of ours, go onto their YouTube channel. You have a playlist of First Information and a bunch of other podcasts that they have. So it's definitely very helpful. And if you are a Patriots fan somehow listening to us, I'm very surprised if you are. There's a lot of Patriots content on there that they're talking about Mac Jones, Billy Zappi, who knows, maybe even Bill Belichick for all we know. But now let's transition to one of Bill Belichick's former players who is sadly in the running for a playoff contention, considering how bad he's played this year, and that's Tom Brady. So, Myles, is it over for Brady and the Bucs?
I mean, the only reason it's not over is because of how bad that division is.
Exactly.
Like, I get that the Panthers won against the just awful Broncos, and honestly, Atlanta. If Atlanta could just squeak out a couple more of these games, because they should have won that game against Washington. They had the chance right at the goal line, and Mariota throws the pick. But that's the only reason it's not over for them. But Wirfs goes out with the injury in the fourth quarter or overtime of that game.
It was.
I can't remember. It was late. It was in overtime. Yeah, he goes out with the injury, and that's definitely and clearly their best offensive lineman. And for me, like, it doesn't look like Brady has really fallen off that much. Like, he's still zipping the balls in there, but their offense just cannot do anything. Like, they just stall out. Like, for them to have 17 points for majority of that game and have a 7-point lead for majority of that game, and to the score just not get any better. They punted twice in overtime. Like, when do you see a team punt twice in overtime? And when you look at it, so I saw this tweet that it was Tom Brady. So the Browns scored with 32 seconds left to tie the game with the Buccaneers, then won it in overtime. That was the first game of Tom Brady's career in which his team has held a 7-point plus lead in the final minute of the fourth quarter, and he ended up losing the game. So, like, it's clearly not the same Brady, because any other time in the history of his career, that game is put away. Put away, and even if it goes to overtime, they still win that game.
Yep.
But the guy that honestly looks washed to me is one Mike Evans. And I'm sad to say that, because he's just been such a physically dominating beast throughout his career, whether it was with Brady, before that when, they had the Jameis Winston, Ryan Fitzpatrick tandem at quarterback. He was just always a problem. And it seems like it's gotten away from a little bit.
I also feel like Tom Brady hasn't helped Mike Evans either, because Tom Brady this year, he's missed a lot of throws. I understand, he's still throwing the ball well, but there's a lot of times where the ball placement, Brady, you just didn't put him in the right spot. Like, there's a lot of throws. If anyone wants to see yesterday's game, he played bad. Tom Brady was just as bad as everyone out there on that field. Like, he was. There was one throw to Chris Godwin. I don't know if you remember, Chris Godwin was like running up the seam. He just completely overthrows him. And then the throw
he was open too.
Open. And then that throw in overtime to Mike Evans. Brady should know Mike Evans is not as fast as as some of his other receivers. Why would you throw him a deep ball when Mike Evans' strength is his body? Like, throw him something that he can, maybe a jump ball or a comeback, something where Mike Evans can use his strength to beat the corner. And he just simply was like, nope, we're going deep. I'm going to throw it as far as I can when Mike Evans is not the fastest. That's just dumb decision-making on Brady's part. And
for me, the biggest thing that I think he's missing is that he just doesn't have that release valve, whether it's a running back or the tight end. Because I mean, since the Patriots drafted Gronk, it was okay. Gronk will be open on the third downs that we need, or whenever we absolutely need a completion just to move the sticks, there's Gronk. And then before that, he had the running backs, whether it was James White back in the day with Kevin Falk. Like, they always had running backs that he would always target or have the release valve that he was 100% comfortable with. And, I definitely think he trusts Godwin a lot. Like, because Godwin, he's always targeting. Like, that's usually
so much.
Yeah, that's usually the guy they go to when it's 3rd and 4 and stuff like that. And I can't even blame the running game because they actually ran pretty well against the Browns, and the Browns defense can't stop anybody on the run. And Rashard White, it's Rashard White, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, the running back that they have. He put up numbers. I think he went for 17 carries for 93 yards. So it wasn't like, oh, they just couldn't do anything on offense. It was really the passing game that let them down. And I just can't believe Tom Brady lost to the Cleveland Browns.
Browns.
And
With
it's such a it's
Kobe
like
Brissett possibly making his last start in the NFL because
his former
Deshaun
backup.
Watson's coming back.
His
So
former backup, he loses the game to. And it's such a weird game because you have that video on Twitter of there being a skunk in the Cleveland
yeah,
Browns stadium. There's tire marks on the field because somebody vandalized the game before.
donuts.
Yeah, and that's the team Tom Brady loses to. They can't even control what's going on in their own field, but somehow they beat Tom Brady. But that Njoku catch at the end of the game,
Crazy.
I mean, that's some Spider-Man stuff.
Yep.
How do your hands just hold on to that ball?
Yep. To be honest, I wasn't even going to be mad if the defense was mad at Tom Brady, like the way the Broncos defense was mad at Russell Wilson, because no one cannot tell me, and you said it, the Buccaneers had that lead for a long time. So their defense was getting the Browns 3 and out and to punt the ball right back to them.
It was 17-10 for like an hour and a half, I felt like, in that game.
Yeah.
Like every time I saw they switched back to it on red zone, it was still 17-10.
Yeah. And I was like, you guys can at least get 2 field goals? You can't get 2 field goals at least?
Yeah.
So,
or even just 10. If they would have just made it 10. Okay, yeah, even if that Njoku catch still happens. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. And right now they're in contention to be a playoff spot. And if it was to end today the regular season, they played the Dallas Cowboys.
They would host the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep. And I just go like, as much as I know Mike McCarthy might screw it up, I really would like strongly consider taking Dallas just because I'm like, how are you going to stop Micah Parsons when Tristan Wirth is gone?
I have no idea. And how is the offense even going to look any better? How is the running game going to get any better
And I don't know if Devin White and Levante David, I don't know if they could stop Tony Pollard.
And I don't know if they have anybody to guard CD. Like, it's been crazy how hard and fast this team has fallen off.
I mean, the defense has done good because they only average like they're top 10 in like almost every category. So they've played well. It's just the offense has not done anything to help back them up. And when it comes down time, if the other team has momentum, they're like, oh, we can beat the Bucs easy. So
yeah, it's not the same feeling as usually when a team led by Brady, because you're like, oh, we don't want to score with too much time left because Brady's going to come out and just execute and get at least get you in field goal range. But outside of that first week when Dak got hurt, it's not even like the team I would say looked that impressive. They were just able to shut down the Cowboys offense for 3 quarters and then Dak got hurt. I don't remember a game where they've looked good. I mean, now when you look at their losses, they lost to Carolina. They got absolutely run over by Baltimore, and Baltimore's had a really up and down season. So it's not like they're any type of juggernaut. So it's been a really, really weird season. They almost lose to Green Bay. They almost lose that game to Green Bay.
They did lose to Green Bay. They lost by 2 points because
they did. They did. Brady could. Okay, yeah, I had it confused because Brady couldn't get the 2-pointer. I had it Rodgers on the field for some reason there, but yeah, they lose to Green Bay, who is simply just not good. Like simply not good, and that's without Christian Watson, who all of a sudden is a touchdown machine, and he didn't even play in that game. That was the game where Dobbs went off. So it's been a really funky season for them, and the only really luck that they've had all year is that the NFC South sucks.
Yeah, that's it.
The
if
NFC
this
South
was
sucks.
any other year, the Saints run away with this division, and
the Saints have to be kicking themselves. The Saints have to absolutely be kicking themselves because they should be hosting a playoff game. Like right now, they should be in line to host a playoff game, but they can't figure out anything to do on offense.
Nope.
And I still think they have pieces. Like I think Olave is really good. Kamara, it looks like he's kind of fallen off, but he still gives you flashes.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to win when Andy Dalton's your quarterback.
Yep. You need that MVP caliber player to really, sometimes get you over the hump, but that doesn't happen. But with MVP on talks, at this current moment, who is your NFL MVP?
This is so tough. honestly, for me, I'm going Hurts. I'm going Hurts.
I'm not too mad about that.
But I think it's super tough, and I know Mahomes is currently the betting favorite, and he's actually minus at this point. So according to FanDuel, they have it actually moved after yesterday's win to the Rams. So the MVP odds, Mahomes remains the favorite. He went from 150 to 160 after the Chiefs' 26-10 win over the Rams. In that game, Mahomes threw for 320 yards with a touchdown, an interception, and added 36 yards rushing. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts, his line also moved. It went from plus 550 before the Packers game to plus 350, and we saw what he did. He threw for 153 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then the crazy part, 157 yards on the ground. And then you have Tua, who I think is in the race. He threw for 299 yards and a touchdown, didn't play the fourth quarter, so wasn't able to, really pad his stats in that way. But I think if you look at it, it's going to be, I think next week is a really, really strong case for anybody to make that they're the MVP, because you have the Chiefs going to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. The Eagles host the Titans, and the Dolphins travel to the 49ers. So I think a big win or a statement win from any of those 3 teams, it could honestly start solidifying somebody for the MVP, whether it be Hurts, whether it be Mahomes or Tua. But there's also those later games like Josh Allen, I think is still kind of in the mix. He's had a couple of not as great weeks as he had to start off the season, especially with the turnovers. But for me, I'm going Hurts at this current moment.
I'm not too mad about that. There is one player I would take out of the MVP race just for the simple fact it's not his fault, but I would take Tua out of the race because for the past years, no MVP has missed games. No, it's not Tua's fault that he missed games. He got hurt. That's completely not his fault. And missing those games is going to hurt his chances a bit when it comes to it, because they're going to go, look, these guys played for their teams a whole year. Tua missed 3 games. No, it's not his fault, but still he missed them. And Tua's numbers right now, he has 2,564 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 3 picks, and his QBR is 82 first in the NFL. Then we have Jalen Hurts, who has 2,560 yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 picks, QBR is 68, which is 4th. And then we have Patrick Mahomes, who has 3,585 yards, 29 touchdowns, 8 picks, and a 77 QBR, which is 2nd. And I hate to say this for anyone, the MVP it's a stat award. It's a stat award, and at this moment, I do think it's Patrick Mahomes, but I feel like if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles win out, if they can just win and end the season with 1 loss, I do believe Jalen Hurts can win the MVP, because most of the times it always goes to the best player on the best team. I mean, look at Rodgers last year, 13-3 for the past 2 years, number 1 seed. He was the best player, and he got the MVP. No, there was moments. He had moments of MVP moments that solidified it. So I do agree with you. I believe this weekend could be a very much statement for anyone. I feel like if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles demolish the Titans in a way that how they did in the first half of the year, I believe that definitely gives Jalen Hurts a big momentum boost. If Patrick Mahomes, if they could avenge their loss to the Bengals last year in the regular season and from the AFC Championship game, and if it's a high-scoring game where the defense is just not doing what they need to do and Mahomes is just throwing bombs like crazy or in touchdowns, I could see that happening. And then for Tua's case against the 49ers, I believe if the 49ers are on the ropes and they turn it into a shootout, taking away the 49ers' strength, which is their defense, and making it Jimmy Garoppolo versus Tua game, then I do believe Tua makes a very strong argument for the MVP. But as of right now, I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes, because I know at the end of the day, every year it's always been the quarterback with the best stats. And right now it's Patrick Mahomes at this current moment. as much as I feel like Jalen Hurts deserves it, I believe right now it's Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, I get you. For me, I feel like the Chiefs have been leaving me wanting more. Like I don't think that has anything to do with Mahomes. I just feel like the offense is like a player away, and I get that they lost Tyreek Hill, but it just to me it feels like they're not 100% connected. And even with that, obviously Mahomes is putting up amazing stats and has been balling. But like even that Rams game yesterday, I mean, personally, I think at this point the Rams are the second worst team we have in the NFL right now behind the Texans. Like I think the Texans are the worst, and then it's either the Rams or the Broncos at this point as the two.
Honestly, I take the Broncos just because the Broncos' expectations were so much. The Broncos
I
had a
mean,
little bit of higher expectations because they have more
I
of a
mean,
complete team.
yeah, but the Rams just won the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. That's the
Yeah,
argument there.
but and I just felt like that the Mahomes of old and the Chiefs of old would have put that game away early and probably would have ended up with 35, 45 points in that game. So I just feel like this isn't the best version of Mahomes that we've gotten. I think this is the best version we've gotten with the least amount of talent. So it's hard to, weigh those two things because it's like, all right, I think his stats could be better, obviously, if he had better teammates. But I think it's amazing that he's at this point with these stats and the drop off in talent that he had going from, Tyreek Hill and trying to piece it together for the wide receiver group. And then for me, the thing is with Hurts is that he is like how Mahomes was in the last few years, where I feel like everything has to go through him. Like he's the one extending the plays. He's the one, dropping dimes. Or even in that game against Washington, the offense is struggling. They're not having the best game on defense, and then he hits Quez Watkins for an amazing
And
deep
then
pass.
Watkins fumbles it.
Watkins fumbles it. So, and then you look at the Indianapolis game. The defense, kind of held it down. The offense wasn't really moving. Then in the fourth quarter, who bails them out with their legs? It's Jalen Hurts. And then yesterday, you look at that game, and it's like he really single-handedly won that game in the first quarter. 100 yards rushing by a quarterback in the first quarter is insane. And like those were chunk runs. Like it wasn't like, oh, he broke out of a tackle and then there was nobody left on that side. Like he was
No
just
one
gone.
touched him within the first 10 yards.
He was just gone. And it was weird, the Packers game plan for that, because they kept over rushing their lanes. And, I thought the Sunday Night Booth did a really good job explaining that and showing like how wide open these lanes were. But for me, I would go Hurts. I know he doesn't have the best passing number stats because, he's not the type of guy that's going to regularly put up 300 yards for a game. And then I think it is a valid argument with Tua. And I don't know if you saw, but they are changing the way that they are registering the MVP this year, the voting. It's going to be changed to the NBA format where each voter gets to vote 1 through 5, and then it's a points based on how many times you were voted first, second, third, whatever. So I honestly think that Tua might get cannibalized a little bit by Tyreek Hill and the fact that he did miss those games, which, like you said, it wasn't his fault, but that is something that did happen. And, it was not a stretch where the team really needed it, but it did kind of prove his value to the team because he wasn't out there and the offense looked completely different than it does when he's out there. But if they keep winning games, I think if they win the AFC East, especially considering that it is case. Yeah, if it is Buffalo and it's Josh Allen, who I think was the favorite to win the MVP going into the year, and I know certainly the Bills were the favorite to win the Super Bowl going into the year. So if he can win the AFC East and continue to put up these huge numbers, that's a pretty damn strong case.
Yeah, no, it definitely helps his case. But I will say for Patrick Mahomes' side of argument, there was a tweet someone put, and they said if you take away the purchase of the Broncos, which was like $4.5 billion. The AFC West spent the AFC West spent over $500 million just to lose the AFC West to Patrick Mahomes by December.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm like, there's also the storyline. He lost Tyreek Hill, and then all these defenses that are doing great, whenever they play Patrick Mahomes, they lost. And
I mean, what defenses are really that great?
Oh, well, I mean, the 49ers.
None in his divisions. None of it is.
The Broncos are legit the only good defense, but their offense has just been so bad. Oh, and the schedule. So I will say this for the Chiefs. Their schedule, like going into which one? I'm trying to pull up their schedule. I just went their first 8 games were against teams last year who had a record above 500. They went 6-2.
Okay, I mean, I
That's
definitely, I definitely think he has a case.
yeah, but I also know like the standard that we have for Pat Mahomes is so high. If he doesn't
Yeah,
meet those, it's like okay, that's a disappointment. I mean, people thought last year was a disappointment when I was like, people, he had 4,800 yards, 38 touchdowns. What was bad?
yeah,
That was just my
yeah,
question. And I was like, mm,
that's the thing for me. Is just that I just don't think this is the best version of Patrick Mahomes that we've seen. So it'd be weird for me. Like this is the year that he finally wins. The MVP. But I mean, if you look at their schedule this year, have they really? I mean, yeah, they played impressive teams. Honestly, it might be his right now as we're talking. It's
it's his to
probably his award
lose.
to lose. Yeah,
Yeah,
and he's got a cake schedule coming up after the Bengals game. It's at Denver, at Houston, home
Seattle,
Seattle, home
Denver,
Denver, at
and the
Las Vegas. They
Raiders.
might run the table.
Yeah, I mean, if they could run the table and finish the season 15-2, I mean, and have
We'll see
the
if how
ones
much they care going into the last 2 games. It depends on what the 1 seed will be for the AFC, but yeah, that schedule outside of that Cincinnati game, I don't think they'll be.
cakewalk.
I think it'll be a cakewalk, and they'll probably be at least a touchdown favorite over the schedule that they have.
Yep,
Maybe the Raiders might sneak in there and be a 5-point underdog just because they might actually need to win that game to keep their playoff hopes alive. But
that's very
we'll see.
true. That's very true. Well, that was good. That was some good talk about NFL MVP. But now let's give you guys some fantasy talk because we have some stars and busts of the week in fantasy. And I mean, Miles, do you want to start with the stars or the busts?
We could start with the stars. I think that one of the most obvious stars ever is Josh Jacobs.
I mean,
Like
it's hard to argue that. It's really hard to
that
argue.
that is insane what he did, and that walk off touchdown in overtime. And I mean, he just went insane. He combined for over 300 yards. He
I
put up a
mean, it's
300-yard game, 229 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, uh, 6 catches for 74 yards, and the game-winning 86-yard touchdown. Like that's
for
straight
anyone
up
who had
beast
him,
mode.
you got 48 points just off of him alone.
And he's the 6th player in NFL history to record at least 300 scrimmage yards and multiple scrimmage touchdowns in a single game.
I mean, it's quite unbelievable. That was Josh Jacobs' day. And I will be honest, if it wasn't for Josh Jacobs, I probably would have picked some other people to be stars like Miles Sanders. He was one of my stars. He got 31 points. Let me see. I'm trying to go through my notes here. Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb got 20 points, like a very solid 20 points. But when Josh Jacobs came at 4 o'clock and his game, I was like, well, it's kind of hard to now pick another star because who could compete with that?
Yeah.
No one.
For me, another star that I had was one Trevor Lawrence. He put up
Great game.
321 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and then he had a 10-play, 75-yard game-winning drive, and then the 2-point conversion to top it all off too.
Yeah, I mean
and he was dropping dimes. I mean, Zay Jones was a monster for them. I believe he had like 12 catches for 100 and something yards in that game. So
he had a very solid game, very solid.
But I don't know if that's more of them being stars of the week or the Ravens just imploding on
bust.
themselves again,
Yeah.
man. Another double-digit point
Loss.
lead just blown for them.
I mean, that's why I would say my stars. I had several stars, but Josh Jacobs nullified all of them. So I was like,
Yeah, because it's like
Josh Jacobs.
who else could it really be outside of Josh Jacobs? Because I mean, if you had him, like you were obviously balling, and then obviously another star we talked about was Hurts. You mentioned Miles Sanders as well, as they just absolutely gashed the Packers in the ground game.
But
There
that's
was
why I
literally nothing.
but that's why I had to give him fantasy. The Baltimore Ravens defense was a bust of the week. Like that, they had it right there. I mean, I wanted to give it to Dalvin Cook, but I also was like, all right, this was the weekend game, so I can't really give it to him in terms of like a bus. The only one I'm going to give a bus this week, just because I expected more out of him, and I feel bad because Myles has this player, is George Kittle.
Oh,
George
he's
Kittle only
done.
got 5 points when I was like, all right, the Saints, yeah, the Saints have a
He's
good
done.
defense, but so I was like, all right, man, like to only get 5 points from the Saints, that's where I was like, okay, like, bro, I don't know what it is. Like, on average, like, he should get, like, if we're being honest with ourselves in terms of like fantasy points, he should at least give you like 12 to 15 a week.
He's done being a reliable fantasy tight end. Like that's 100% over.
It's boom or bust.
And it's like a question from week to week if he's even going to be, healthy enough to be in your lineup. So that's why I think he's done being a reliable fantasy weapon. A guy that I'm not going to necessarily call him a bust because he had a somewhat solid game. I was going to go Terry McLaurin because he is the wide receiver number one, but he just like if you look at him fantasy wise, he's going to be a top 10 to 15 receiver throughout the league, but he just doesn't average that many points. And it's still like he puts up solid games. Like yesterday, he had 6 targets, only ended up with 4 receptions, 48 yards. But when you have a guy like that, when you're going top 10 to 15, you're like, all right, can you at least just give me like 10 points a week?
Yeah.
And it's just it seems like it never really comes together. And then randomly he'll just give you one of those big weeks. We mentioned Mike Evans. For Mike Evans to go a full game that went into overtime and have 2 receptions for 31 yards,
A total
that's
of
when
five
you're like,
points.
why am I even playing fantasy? Like,
Yeah.
there's no way that this guy can play 4 full quarters, go into overtime, and it be an extended overtime period with punts and multiple possessions for both teams, and the guy only finishes with 2 catches and 31 yards.
Yeah. Some of these guys who are busts, I mean, it is bad. Mike Evans was definitely on my list. Uh it's
Tyler Boyd only 2.6, even with Chase still missing this week. At
yeah.
least they had T. Higgins, but I mean, come on.
Yeah.
At some point, I don't think he can even be rosterable at this point. Like, I think he's taking up a roster spot that you could potentially get somebody that's just an injury away from having a really significant role because even with Chase going out, it's not like he's really stepped up and
Yeah.
elevated himself into the fantasy discussion at all.
Yeah. And then I want to also say certain guys, well, just in terms of fantasy, they just didn't give up points, but a lot of those guys did
Kamara.
get hurt. I was gonna say Travis Etienne.
Oh
If
yeah,
anyone
but
didn't know,
that one was injury related. But
yeah,
Kamara is just that's
Kamara,
inexcusable.
that was
Two
bad.
fumbles, two fumbles.
Yep, it was bad. But I mean, hey, that's fantasy football. That's a good
I
and
mean,
bad of fantasy.
yeah, I mean, we were texting during the game yesterday with Derrick Henry getting a 76-yard screen pass, taking it all the way, like zigzagging all through the Bengals
To
defense,
get to like
taking
the
it
one
like the half-yard line. Like he just literally just had to, like he just needed
fumble.
a half more step more. Fumbles. Traylon Burks gets the easiest touchdown he'll probably ever get in the history of his life. Like I don't even think he got one easier than that in like Pee Wee football as a kid. And you lose. But for some reason, none of the fantasy sites have given him -2 for that fumble.
Yeah,
Is it only fumbles lost?
I think it might be the fumbles lost.
Okay. But
But
yeah,
then
Traylon
also
Burks out here being
it
a
took away a
vulture.
touchdown from any Ryan Tannehill owners as well. It took away a touchdown from him.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Any
How?
Ryan Tannehill owners, they didn't get the touchdown because it was a fumble.
Oh my god. That's so tough. I didn't even think about that one. That's like in the Monday night game against the Commanders when Devontae had 80 something yards and then
Yeah,
they tried that hook and lateral at the end of the play and he throws it like 13 yards back and he loses 13 yards on the play.
yeah. So
Fantasy is that's the breaks in fantasy. You could be so close to a 79-yard catch and touchdown, and then next thing you know, the rookie wide receivers laying on the football in the end zone.
yeah, and that leads a good segue into fantasy update. So
Oh, do
for
we have to?
so for anyone that doesn't know, I I would say this. I feel bad for Miles because as much as Miles has tried, Alex is always in his way this
I
year.
just can't. I can't stay in that first place. There's just something about
For
this
some
league where
reason,
I'm just
whenever
not
Miles is
destined for it.
for some reason, whenever he's gonna run away, Alex just comes like right behind him, and I'm like, oh my god, like because this week Alex and Miles played each other, and Miles is 8-3, Alex is 7-4, and Miles just got beat. Like there was no ifs, ands, or buts. Like Miles just got beat.
And I still had a solid performance from everybody. I mean, the only ones that did get double digits are Kittle and Devonta Smith.
Yeah.
But I got 18 from Burrow, 21 from Connor, 16 from Walker, 15 from Tariq, 15 from Lockett, and still not even a ball game.
And then, but Alex on the other hand had Jalen Hurts, who got him 30 points. Eckler 25. Jamal Williams gave him 10. Stephon Diggs 21. Njoku 13. Rashad White 20. The 49ers defense 12. So I mean, almost any
even his punter got 11.
I mean, yeah, his punter got 11 points. So you can't even be mad. His team just went off. The only person who didn't score double digits was his kicker.
Yeah, and I actually got double digits for my kicker, and I still had no shot.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
and he has Michael Pittman left to play while Miles has the Steelers defense, and then so now they're at a tie back again for first place.
Yeah,
and we'll see depending on the points for who gets the number 1 seed, and then we got me, where I played Dom, my good friend Dom, and the final score was 176 to 136. I won. I can't even be mad, bro, because there's only there's only 2 people on my team that didn't score over 10 points. Dalvin Cook and my punter.
This week was the week of blowouts, and pretty much all the leagues I was in, there weren't too many matchups that were even semi-close. Like, it was the week of blowouts in fantasy, and especially if you faced Jalen Hurts, like there was nothing you were going to do, really. If you faced Josh Jacobs, actually in my other league, the kid that had Jacobs still lost by double digits.
Oh Lord, never mind.
Yeah, he lost to the number 1 seed with Jacobs, and it's because he got shafted by McCaffrey. Because I guess that they're trying to save McCaffrey a little bit, because there was a lot of Elijah Mitchell and this Hasty kid. I was like, okay.
Well, remember, for anyone that doesn't know, the 49ers are running back by committee.
That's why it was so surprising that they decided to trade their entire future draft picks for Christian McCaffrey, because I always thought they could just find anybody to plug in back there.
Yeah, and they were going to get Elijah Mitchell like within 2 weeks after they traded him. It's like, okay, so why are you doing this?
Yeah, but what's the point?
Here it is.
And they already had Jeff Wilson?
Yep. And here it is. Lamar 23, Ramondre Stevenson 20, Jefferson 29, AJ Brown 12, Schultz 19, Godwin 29, Chiefs defense 13, Tucker 14. Thank you, Justin Tucker. And then
I mean, you were 3 yards away from him putting up a 20 bomb?
Yeah.
That was a crazy kick. And that was great camera work by CBS, I believe, had that game.
Yeah.
Because from that back angle, when I first saw the kick, I was like, oh my God, he could have kicked it from 80 yards. Like, it looked like it was so money. And then you see the full angle, and it's like, oh, the wind just killed it, because it has so much momentum. So, and then you just see it just slowly start to die. I'm like, did people start blowing? Like, how is this possible?
Man. Oh, and for anyone that doesn't know, I want everyone to know the chaos of our league. So now I will be 7-5. Dom will be 7-5. Myles and Alex will both be 8-4. Pete will be 8-4. JP will be 6-6. And then Nick is 7-4 right now. He's playing against Moises. He has 2 players left to play. And if
that's a fun matchup.
And if he loses, he's 7-5. So then we will have 3 teams at 8-4 and 3 teams at 7-5.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot tell me this is a bloodbath.
It's really, really down to the wire. Like, absolutely down to the wire.
And this is like these last 2 weeks, it's going to determine who gets what.
And this is where you like start really kicking yourself for not having the right guy in at flex, or leaving 21 points on your bench, because those points for that points for is a tiebreaker. So it could be a real killer, or it could be a real positive for your season, especially if you end up with needing that tiebreaker.
Yep. And as of right now, for points for, this is not counting this week. It's not hasn't put this week's points. Myles is 1. I'm 2. Alex is 3. Peter is 4. Nick is 5. JP is 6. And then Dom is all the way at 8. So it's gonna be tough. Those wins that you got early in the season definitely matter, but like Myles said, points for, those are important. Like you need to have gotten some points out of your team, because I mean, it's going to be tough.
Any extra points you leave on a bench could be a tiebreaker. Because even if it's 2 points, it's not like 2 points you're right there. No, you need to be more.
And then right now, anyone who's like in our league trying to do something, like you got to make a trade now. Yeah, like we're coming down to the last weeks. If you can make a trade for that one player that's going to win you the league. Because we
have that locked in lineup. So like all right, this is my team. This is how I'm riding. Like I'm sticking with this. These are my guys.
So is there a player you're trying to go after for?
I have to look, because I think I could put together a pretty good package with the team that I have. I just don't know what I should be targeting, because I do have questions at running back. Like, is Connor really going to be my starting running back as they go into the playoffs, especially as their season starts to slowly slip away from them, the Arizona Cardinals? So I just got to look at one. I got to look at the other teams, but I do think I could put together a somewhat good package. I'm not expecting like a superstar. I'm probably going to have to upgrade at tight end with Goddard being on IR and with Kittle just not being a factor. Yeah. But it's not like there are too many tight ends even out there. Like, this has been really, really bad year for fantasy tight ends, unless you have Kelsey.
You also have wide receiver, because Cup might not even play for the rest of the year.
Oh, no, Cup is over. Yeah, Cup's over. But at least I still have Tyreek, and I have the touchdown creator in Christian Watson.
And then I got to figure out a way to at least help my running back position, because I need to be more consistent at running back.
Yeah, anybody that has Kenneth Walker, blessings.
That's you.
Blessings, man. That kid is something else. It seems like he's going to get at least a touchdown every week. Even when the rushing stats aren't there, he's a factor in the passing game. So even when he doesn't have that crazy, like outside of the 2 touchdowns, but when he doesn't even have that crazy amount of yards gained, he's still putting up double digits easily.
Yep, that was Rachaad White yesterday. He didn't have that
many. And Pacheco too. Pacheco was balling too.
Pacheco's
good, man. It's a little disrespectful that they let him wear number 10, though. Like, they could have waited a year to give somebody 10. Like, they could have waited 1 year.
I mean, I guess they were like, all right, we gotta give someone this number. Let's just give it to
this kid, that's what I was thinking. Do you think Mahomes is like, yo, I'm just so used to spamming number 10. Like, I need a 10 in the offense. Like,
I'm pretty sure the Chiefs didn't think Pacheco was going to make the team. Like, when they drafted him, they're like, all right, this is just a body. Like, we're just going to have him out there. Cool. He'll work.
Yeah, but still, you're going to give a 7th rounder number 10. That's like when KD left the Thunder. They let PJ Dozier wear number 35 in training camp. It's like, what the? What, you guys can't just wait a year?
I remember that backlash because when Odell Beckham Jr. got traded, they gave the number 13 to someone, and everyone just like bashed this player when he goes, people, I didn't choose it. They just gave it to me.
But like, come on, bro. We got so many other numbers. Like, you can't tell me that they still don't have numbers that aren't being used. And with the fact that these guys, it's not numbers by positions anymore, that you can literally wear whatever. I mean, they could have 99 at running back. Yeah. I gotta look him up. Did he wear 10 in college? That's the only excuse that makes it all right. Isaiah Pacheco, college. I don't even know where he went.
That's a good question.
He went to Rutgers. He wore the number 10 and the number 1. But his number when he got drafted, the number that they were using to scout him was number 1. He only wore 10 his freshman year. It's still petty for me.
It's still petty. Well,
yeah, guys, they could have waited a year. And then they put Ronald Jones in there, wearing number 2, and I was like, oh my God, they put a linebacker in, and then I was like, oh no, it's actually Ronald Jones. He looks huge.
Yeah. Well, guys, this was a lot of fun. We'll be back on Friday. We're going to talk Dolphins 49ers, that game coming up.
Big game.
It's going to be a very anticipated game because you have the Dolphins offense and you have the
We
49ers
have fun games
defense.
this week coming up. Bengals,
So-
Bengals, Chiefs in Cincinnati is going to be fun. Titans traveling to Philly is going to be fun. Washington Giants, the Commanders refuse to lose these days.
They're playing some good football right now.
We got a lot. The whole NFC East is in the playoffs at the moment.
Yep.
Like the entire division. That's insane.
Yep. And then we have implications in our fantasy league. So expect some news on Friday of like any moves being made. So guys, we can't wait to do this. We'll be back on Friday with another episode of 3 or 5 Takes, and we can't wait to see you guys.
Peace.